Welcome, Sunflowers, to Good Journeys Tarot. I'm Rosemary, and we are here for 78 cards in 78 weeks, where I explore each of the cards in the tarot as I attempt to create my own deck. This week, we are talking about a card that can oftentimes be confusing because of the imagery used by various artists. Before we get into that, let's talk about what's happening here at Good Journeys Tarot right now. And one of those things that happened Wednesday was I did a video called What's So Great? The Robinwood Tarot with Gerald from Tarot Stash and Amy from Strength Reverse. And that video, which was a live, is now one of the most popular videos on my channel. And so I think we want to do this again with some other decks. There are decks that have been on my wish list for a long time that I've never acquired for various different reasons. So I'm going to grab some of those decks, and then I'm going to invite those of you who love that deck to come on and tell me what's so great. I did think about changing the name of that series after some thought to Defend the Deck. Let me know what your thoughts are about the name of that series. The next one will be on June the 13th. That's also a Wednesday, the second Wednesday of July, and it will be at 6 p.m. And I will be asking people who love the Santa Muerte Tarot to tell me what's so great about it. Who needs a deck of skeletons, right? And certainly Amy and Gerald, who convinced me to buy the deck, could join me. But I imagine there are other people out there who really love that deck and would enjoy having a conversation about it. So please do feel free to reach out to me at any of the means available on my link tree. It will be alive, and so we will. Here is the link for the link tree. There are a number of methods to contact me there, not just through Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc., YouTube, but also the email for Good Journeys Tarot, as well as all of the other things, including that wish list. If you want to see what other decks are on my list that I just haven't bit the bullet and bought yet, you can check that out. And if one really appeals to you, feel free to share it with me. I have two other videos that I'm working on, and I would love to do those as lives also. So if these topics interest you, please do let me know, and I will invite you to join me in talking about them. One of them is the tarot as a mirror, which will not only discuss how the tarot reflects our lives, but it will also discuss cards in our collections which utilize mirrors and how mirrors have been portrayed in the tarot. And I would love for you to join me. Another upcoming video that I'm going to be doing is on queer decks, not decks that include LGBT representation, but decks that are primarily LGBT or queer inclusive or related decks. Surprisingly, I have 4 that came to mind right off the top of my head in my collection, and at least 2 others that I don't have in my collection. Though when I first started studying the tarot, there wasn't a lot of representation, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So if that's a topic that interests you and you have some decks that you would love to share, please do reach out to me and let me know. I don't have dates for the mirror or the queer decks videos yet because I want to see who's going to join me. So the other thing that happened this week is that we just had a video called Halfway There, in which I showed the top 5 cards according to TikTok. So if you're not following me on TikTok, hop on over there. It's at Good Journeys Tarot, like everywhere. That's my only handle, Good Journeys Tarot. This week, I did not post a video because I am not content on my 3 of Pentacles yet, which we'll get into it a little bit. But while we're talking about the top decks, I thought I would share with you some of my favorite cards. and that we've done so far since we're halfway through. This card today will actually be the first card in the second half of our process. There we go. Whoops, wrong screen share. Let me remove that. Share the correct screen. I really need to have a multiple screens up so that I can do this more efficiently. I like to actually be able to see StreamYard when I'm also showing a screen. Here you're going to see some of my favorite cards. The first 5 are major arcana that we've created that I love. This is our Chariot, which is based on my time in the Philippines in Manila. Then there is the Hermit, which I did recently. I really did love how this turned out from an image standpoint, very much so. Another of my favorites was the Hanged Man or Hanged One, which is definitely a scene from my own life, growing up on the river in South Carolina. The Shadow, which is the favorite card of people on TikTok so far. It by far has the most likes comparison to the number of views. This was heavily influenced by Tarot Stash himself, as we've talked about before. It turned out really well, and I'm very excited about this card. I also like how my world card ended up. It incorporated everything I wanted to see in the world card and still resembles an image that we are all familiar with. The minor arcana, surprisingly, the 2s are among my favorite cards, as well as for TikTok viewers. They loved this image of the 2 of Swords more so than any other minor arcana card that we've created. The 3 of Swords, again, there are also, in addition to the 2s, there are a lot of swords, which people really love. This is a very traditional type of imagery. You'll see that heart with the 3 swords like we see in the Smith Waite, but I've placed it in a specific context with a specific person. One of my favorites is also this Spark, which we get in the Ace of Fire. This also relates to a story in my life from my childhood. Then the 2 of Fire, or Wands, as we may call it in some decks, which I think turned out lovely. I love that this very non-binary person is in the image. I love that we've been able to incorporate imagery that is familiar from the Smith Waite, but also place it in a very different kind of context. And then probably, I don't know for sure, but I suspect that this is my favorite card in the entire deck. This was a very personal card for me, the 4 of Fire, or Wands. And you can actually read about that on my website, goodjourneystarot.com. It was one of my most recent blog posts where I shared the guidebook entry for this, as well as the personal story behind it. So we have a few people popping in today. We have with us Joan B., as well as Antoinette from Intuitive Tarot and Jewelry. So glad that you're here. That's funny. Maybe I should call the Shadow Gerald. Yeah, I love your comments here. So please do chime in. That's why I do this every week, to get people's feedback on these things. I want to share one more thing with you before we hop into starting to talk about the 3 of Pentacles. And that is, there we go. I keep having to switch screens because I can only do one at a time. And that is that this week, the print copy of the Cartomancer for the summer, which features my article, The Myth of Duality, will be coming out. And so if you're at all interested in reading that article, you can still acquire it in print version if that interests you. It will also eventually be available as a digital version if you want to wait. I actually found a really great book on um, Amazon this week, which specifically relates to that article and the idea that it's not so much a duality as a triplicity or a trinity of um, representation. And it's called Queer Kabbalah. And I'm looking forward to reading that. I added it to my wish list for some future reading. So let's talk a little bit about the Three of Pentacles. And we're going to start by speaking about the 3 versus the 8. And I want to read what Waite says about this card in the pictorial key. A sculptor at his work in a monastery. Compare the design which illustrates the 8 of Pentacles. The apprentice or amateur therein has received his reward and is now at work in earnest. So the idea for Waite is that the 8 is the apprentice and the 3 is the master having accomplished something. So this can represent a number of things, including skilled labor, renown, glory, that type of thing. What's interesting is that we get very different feelings from the cards in regards to the 3s. So let's look at how some of them come across. Here is a group of cards that really speak to collaboration. Here we have 3 people coming together with 3 pieces to put them together in the Star Seekers Tarot. Again, here 3 hands, 3 pentacles coming together. That idea of collaboration in the 3 of Pentacles. And even in the Life is Like a Board Game, that's actually the name of the street. It is the Collaboration Avenue. This is a card that I actually had to Google about killer whales before I understood what it was about, but this is about collaboration. They hunt in pods or groups. And so this is the Curious Travels deck. And then another card which kind of embraces that idea of collaboration. Technically, it's called Works because it is Thoth inspired. But it has 3 witches there working together on a spell. This could very easily have been a 3 of Cups image, as 3 of Cups is often associated with ritual and people coming together to perform ritual. And then there's the Lily White. The Lily White's beautiful. Again, that focus on work here. The hammer and the chisel and whatnot there. Very, very interesting, the focus that different artists take with this card. I have a whole group of cards here that focus solely on the work, like this one where the pentacles are being illustrated in the Hearts and Hands Tarot. The Rosetta Tarot, where we have this wasp or bee building a hive, right? And the idea that the insects cooperate in order to build that work. The Spirit Keepers Tarot, this happens to be the Vitruvian, has focused on the actual work itself and the detail and the craftsmanship that is going into the work, focusing on this card as the Mason, the actual artist who created the work. And we see that in other Thoth-inspired decks as well, like the Urban Tarot here. A team of people have to come together to put up a building like this. And then this one I'm showing you because I'm going to hop over again and show you another image. And this is, again, it seemingly kind of focuses on that work there, right? That stained glass. And the reason that I bring that up and I really wanted to show that card is that one of my first attempts at creating a tarot deck was taking photographs, and I did a photo a day um, deck where I created first this card based on my trip to the Philippines. And then later I depicted this card, and you'll see the font is different there because my app changed. So we know I created them at different times. But seemingly these both could be a 3 or an 8 because they're about craftsmanship. But after a lot of thought, I have decided that this one, which is actually a stained glass image that my former manager who passed away created, and I thought was beautiful, would be a better depiction of the Eight of Pentacles, that practicing of a craft idea. Whereas this one, which is the Banawi Rice Terraces, and if you're not familiar with them, it's one of the few wonders of the world that was not built by slave labor. It was actually the cooperation of families and a community trying to feed themselves. And so I think it would probably be a better 3 of Pentacles because there is that collaboration effort coming together. And we see that kind of collaboration in craftsmanship here in the Light Seers deck, and as well as in the Bone Stone and the Earth Flush. And in a more modern deck, the Pocket of Peers, Jamie Sawyer talks about her father and how when people say that there's no I in team, he says, yes, but there is a me, an M and an E. And, we can't forget that we are an important part of a team. We have to put in our contribution for there to be success, right? Here is probably one of my favorite depictions based on what Waite had to say about the card, and that is the Fyodor Pavlov. Here we see a master and an apprentice working together. So this person is honing their craft and learning their craft from a master as they work together on this. The Robin Wood focuses on the master, and that is an idea that Waite would probably approve of based on what he had to say. I do love this image. I like how the feathers are being carved out of stone. It's really striking to me. Then we have a whole group of cards that focus on the education or the feedback, right? Rather than this being solely about someone who has mastered their craft, it is actually about giving of the feedback, i.e. someone has created art here and now someone's giving feedback on that art in the modern love. Welcome, Tarot and Witchery. So glad to have you today. Here is the Lightworkers deck, the 3 of Coins, which they associate again with that growth in knowledge and education, building that foundation to climb upon, and its books, right? And then finally, in the Numinous Tarot, we have that also that kind of focus on the student learning their craft. And so you can see how it would be easy to be confused between the 3 and the 8, which is which. And I think it depends on how you view the tarot. Waite viewed the tarot as going from 10 to 1. So he went from the bottom of the tree of life to the top. And so in his mind, he's working towards that perfection of the idea. Even though we tend to think of 10 as completion in his pictorial key, and Rachel Pollack followed suit in 78 Degrees of Wisdom, they count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3 versus going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, in my practice, I've always gone up, right? Because if 10's completion and 1 is the beginning or the spark of that concept or identity, then I would think it would be a progression. So in my mind, the 3 then is actually the apprentice learning their skill. They're just beginning to get some recognition for what they can do. And then the 8 is actually the manifestation of that gift or that talent, that skill, which they now can produce routinely without an issue. And so it really begins to come down to, how do you perceive the tarot? Are you looking at the cards numerically 1 through 10, or are you looking at them 10 going back to 1? And so April is new here. And so what we do every week is, I'm in the process of creating my own deck. And so each week I share cards from my collection that relate to the image that we're working with, as well as my thoughts on my studies of that card. And I invite others to give feedback as well. And then I'll share the imagery that I've created as I've done my study. I do this so that we can collaborate and we can learn together about the cards, and you can see where I'm headed with my study and that type of thing. I utilize a lot of different resources as I go into studying the cards, and we're doing them randomly. So this week we are actually halfway through the deck, and we are working with the Three of Pentacles, or coins. This is called the Lord of Material Works. Now, in the Thoth, sometimes it is called the Lord of Material Work, and sometimes it's called the Lord of Material Works. And that's a difference between the way that Lady Frida Harris titled the card, and the way that Crowley referred to it in his book. And so to me, they almost seem to mean the same way, right? But this card is really about the manifestation of a skill, or the manifestation of that earth energy, right? Where three have come together to form the fourth. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we look at the designs that I created as I worked with this card. Generally speaking, this card is about collaboration. It's about apprenticeship. It's about teamwork. It's about skilled labor. It can be about recognition, or productivity. And so some people tend to focus on it as, since the person is actually demonstrating some mastery, it being the master. Okay. But here we see them collaborating with other people who are either, i.e., giving them feedback on their work, meaning that it's about the apprentice, or someone giving them ideas or input into the design. We don't really know for sure what's going on. That's where our intuition comes in. And so I think sometimes this card, depending on how it comes up in a reading, might read more as the apprentice learning or growing in their skill, i.e. progressing 1, 2, 3, or it may come up as the master, the person who has accomplished, right? Right. And this is definitely one of the ideas that we see coming up in a lot of decks, is the idea of collaboration for a creative endeavor. One of the things that comes up when we look at this in the shadow side is the idea of lack of skill or underperforming. It could be mediocrity, even conflict, rather than collaboration, conflicting ideas amongst a group of people working on a project. And it could be self-doubt, doubting that you have the skill to do the thing that you're being called upon to do, imposter syndrome, as it were. In the Tarot de Marseille, this card is about the building of finances or skill, i.e., the threes are about expansion, about the growth, right? And so that is the idea that the apprentice could be becoming the master. But it's that first moment where you're beginning to learn that you actually have the skills, right? In the reverse, in the Marseille, as well as in the RWS, there is this aspect where it talks about the birth of children. And that's not something that I really equate with this card, because I would tend to equate children more so with um, some of the cups cards, perhaps, um, or even possibly the wands, where we get a more sexual energy going on than I would with, say, the earth suit, which I tend to associate with health, wealth, and that type of thing. Um, this card is Mars in Capricorn. So this is that kind of authority idea, that kind of um, rulership of domain meeting Capricorn, and we get this kind of like idea of intention, right? Of manifesting that intention in a physical way. Welcome, Backyard Naturalists. Seeing lots of new people today. I'm missing some of my regular people, though. Glad to have you all here. Please do chime in with your thoughts on the Three of Pentacles as I continue to talk about it. So this card is on the Tree of Life, Benai, which is the third Sephira, in Asaya. And so this is understanding in that world of creation or manifestation. And so the way that that comes across, and I'm going to pop in our stream of my cards here to talk about, is the idea of water and fire and air coming together, Kabbalistically speaking, to form the world, which is that 10th Sephira at the bottom, right? So those three coming together to form Earth. So 3 equals 1, 1 equals 3. Together, they are actually 4. But that fourth one doesn't exist without the other 3, Kabbalistically speaking. And I want to talk a little bit about the idea of fire and water. And I'm going to do that. Hold on. Pop over here. Boop. Move that for a second. In my coloring, I did this thing. You'll see there's a blue triangle there and there's a red triangle there in the card. And the reason I did that was because of something that I read in 78 Degrees of Wisdom, which I want to share with you now. And it says, together, the three figures signify the best work combines both technical skill, i.e., air, spiritual understanding, water, with energy and desire, fire. There's those Kabbalistic ideas of primal elements which come together to form that earthly thing idea. Observe how the pentacles form an upward pointing fire triangle, showing that work can raise us to higher levels, while below them, a flower sits within a downward pointing water triangle, symbolizing the need to root such work in the reality of the world and the needs of the community. So this idea that our passions meet the needs of the community, producing a work, that collaboration of effort to create something. And so when I first started playing with what I might create for my card, I went there with these kind of Kabbalistic symbols. And so I started with those two triangles, that fire and that water, and then I added the air and the which generated the earth there being that symbol that I've been using in my deck to symbolize the 4 elements as well as the spirit. And but I felt like this was too abstract and it really wasn't quite what I wanted. And I continued to play with it. I ended up creating it as a flag, the triangle still being there, the air, which Kabbalistically is there to keep fire and water separate, and those 3 forming earth. But wasn't happy with this. I mean, it still had 3 people and she was showing the flag, and I even played with the idea of putting the flag on a mountain, showing, we've accomplished something, we've conquered something earthly here. And I wasn't really pleased with that either. And Then I created this symbol, the triangle with the three elements. Together, they form the fourth element, which is there in the center, over some mountains. TerraStash liked this version, but I've then since done another version of the card, which ended up right where I didn't want to be, which was copying the Smith Waite imagery. I got to use my symbol, right, that I created from the elements. But I'm not sure that I'm still happy with this card. What are your thoughts? What about the designs that you've seen? And so I don't know for I think the thing that bugs me about this design is perhaps the colors of the silhouettes. I couldn't use black because then they kind of blended in with the window outline. And I did want the, say, artist, creator to be at a higher level and perhaps a different color than the others, which is why I made them purple versus gray. Um, and that is an option. I could possibly make a table um, or something. I don't know. For some reason, this card has really frustrated me as I've attempted to create it and try to design it. You know, wherever possible, I like to relate my cards to a personal episode in my life. And I've not really been able to do that with this card. The idea of everything coming together to manifest something that gives you some credibility, right? Um, I do like that this one actually, even though it incorporates the ideas of the Smith Waite and some other decks, that it does include that kind of Kabbalistic understanding that I wanted represented in the card. Um, and it looks like that people do like that symbol. So somehow I want to include that in the card. Um, Yeah. And so that's a good question. That's something that I will be considering as the deck comes together. We can actually look at it with the Three of Swords, which has been finished. Let me just hop over here and select it. So this is currently the Three of Swords. Now, why did it do that? I had it select. There we go. Um, I'm trying to think if we have created the I don't believe we've created the Three of Wands yet, or we have done the Three of Cups, but I don't actually have it here in the folder. One moment, let me just add it. Three of Water. Give it a moment to populate. There we go. Oh, there we go. Just scroll over to it. Hopefully. Nope. Okay. One of the things that I don't know. One of the problems. There we go. That one. And where is my other one? There we go. So this is what the current threes look like that we have completed in the deck. Um, I, I I don't know that it doesn't go with the rest of the cards. It actually does resemble some of the other cards in the deck. These three all have a definitely different feeling to me. And that's one of the things I want to look at once I have all of the cards together. But I want to look at each of the depictions that I came up with for sets of cards, like, say, all of the threes together, all of the fours together, or all of the swords together, or all of the um, groups of major arcana, etc. Cards that are related together and see how they correspond with one another. And right, so this is one of the things that I mentioned earlier. In some of the cards, the images are not black silhouettes, either because the black becomes part of the rest of the image. So like in this case, the outline of the window there is black. And it's so bold that once you put the images of the person in there, the person disappears. And so in some cards, I've taken images of people that are significant and I've made them other colors. So like the high priestess is gray so that she's kind of veiled. The Hierophant, which I'm calling the chaplain, is purple to represent divinity. And so one of the reasons that the person is purple versus the other two is because I want to draw attention to this person. Okay. In the Smith Waite, that person is on a bench to denote that they are the person who is being acknowledged here. They have accomplished the work, perhaps with the assistance monetarily or otherwise through ideas of the other two people, but they are the creator in this sense. And I did consider making the person green, and that's something I may play with some more, is the colors of these people. I'm trying so much to not have those two people be standing out, but I want them to be there, right? Now, if you're interested in discussing the imagery and seeing it as it's being created, you can join the Good Journeys into Tarot Facebook group. That is where Gerald from Tarot Stash and Ange from Tiny Trinkets and Tarot have been sharing their thoughts with me as I create the cards. And a lot of times I take people's feedback. The card that you see me post on Instagram and TikTok are typically not the final version of the card because I usually change it following the feedback I get here every week and or update it as I'm doing other cards. Some of the very first cards I did, I've redone 3 or 4. I've learned new skills that I've been able to go back and apply. Yeah, some people are not on Facebook. That's why I also post on Instagram and TikTok, and I also do YouTube videos about the process to get people's feedback from a variety of media and offer them the opportunity to use the one that is beneficial to them. And again, that is all available if you check out my link tree, which is actually posted earlier. Let me just grab it again for you. You'll see every way that you can actually follow along with me and or contact me if you would like to be a guest on either this or another video. Again, I have people come on and show me some of their favorite cards and talk about their understanding of them as we progress through the deck. And I also have some other videos coming up where I would love some other parties to interact with me. Again, if you missed the very first part of this broadcast, I am doing a video on tarot as a mirror. As well as discussing how mirrors have been used in tarot. If you're interested in that topic, I also am working on a video about queer focused decks. If you're interested in that topic and would like to be involved, you can contact me through any of the means that you see there on my link tree. So it's that time of the video each week where we draw the next card. And for those of you who are new, I actually am using my very first working deck. It wasn't my first deck. That's another story that I've told too many times to repeat again. But my first working deck was the RWS. That is this blue back right here. And I used it for probably 10 years before I ever got another deck. And Now I use it to study. You'll see I've written things on it, like correspondences and whatnot, mainly because some of the cards were damaged, and I find it frustrating to work with decks with damaged cards. And attempts to replace damaged cards never go smoothly for me. Never. Never once has it gone right. All right, so let's draw for next week's card. It would be really interesting if it's the 8, because we've talked about how these two seem to be related and sometimes confused from deck to deck, having different meanings. But it is actually the Tower. So next week I'll be talking about the Tower and designing this card in my deck. If you have any interest in talking about the Tower and sharing some of your favorites with us next week, please do reach out to me and let me know so that we can have a collab. I love the interaction I get with other people on lives. And I also enjoy the feedback that you give me in the comments. That's the reason that I'm doing this. And it's important for me to have feedback so that I can create the best deck that I can. For those of you who are new, the idea here is that I'm creating my deck right now with Creative Commons imagery to just print for myself on Make Playing cards. And those who want the link will be able to get it as well. But ultimately, I want to find an illustrator to illustrate it the way I desire it to be. So right now, I'm simply mocking up the deck, how I want it to look using images that are readily available for use. All right, until next week, everyone, thank you for being here and good journeys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I always forget that. Tarot Stash has to promote me every time because I forget that. Have a great week.